The next step I wanted to mention to you is that not all pipe end caps are created equal. These are 1.25 inches because they worked out to be the right size for these to fit in, giving me enough room to do everything that I wanted. The one I showed you before on the left, as you can see here, is the Charlotte pipe cap. The other one that's very popular, sold by Home Depot, is the Lasco, which is much more rounded. First thing to do is get your switch that you like. This has a fairly standard AutoZone type switch, and you're going to mic it right there. Come up here and note that it is, sure enough, it's a 3/8 inch. That means you need to drill a 3/8 inch hole that you're going to locate here in the center on each one of these. That's the first step. And stay zoomed in right where it is. Alrighty, first step after drilling the hole is to file it to within just over 1/8 inch thickness on the top to give you a nice flat spot. Clamp it in your vise. This will dig in if you're not really careful, like that. It takes a lot longer to get out if you don't get it just right. Just about right. So then switch files. And all you're doing is getting out the file marks that you put in a minute ago. About done.
Did I stop filming?
Yep, stay right where you are, Jen. You're doing good.
There's a whisper every time.
It's alright. I got to get out the ones where I dug it in too deep. I'm just coming around the corner. All we're doing is knocking off that high edge and making sure that the rest of that is off. Because I dug it in really deep there, that one's going to be a lot harder to get out. It's going to require additional sanding later. And again, when we do this, you can see where a little over 1/8 inch thickness right in there, which gives us some material to work with as we go all the way around. Alright, the next phase now is to start smoothing this out. You don't want to just sand it, you want to start to round those corners. Use a 60 grit paper, and I'll get started on this. Alrighty, what we've done here is we've flattened it out with the file. We've moved the sandpaper over it to round all these edges and gives us a nice profile. We're almost where we want. All we're doing now is moving to 150 grit or 120 grit to get rid of this next phase. Off.
Now.
Alrighty, what we've done here, we've just about got it the way that we want it. All we're doing is looking to sand out the worst of the 60 grit marks. Need to have them completely erased with the 150. Then we'll go to a 240 for the final buff with steel wool. You don't need to go any finer than a 240 grit. And again, you're staying off the sides as much as possible and just roughing it up and getting rid of all those other marks that you put in there. And when you get done with that, you switch to a 220, 240 grit paper, and then you just continue that same process. Alright, we're just going to take a better look at the center now. And we're going to start checking our thickness. If you look at the thickness there, down in here, you notice that we're just about 1/8 now, maybe just over 1/8. You're going to very gently and rigorously hit it with the steel wool. The steel wool will tell you where you've still got to do some work, as it'll darken the surface up by a tiny bit, and it'll show you what all of your defects are with what you've done so far. Get that, about another 20 seconds here. You can already see a couple of lines in the top that we couldn't see before. So we're actually really close to where we want to be. We've got a couple of lines right in here, some lines right there, they're probably not going to polish out with the steel wool, which means we'll have to switch back to the 150, get them out, and then repolish with the 220.
But
We'll
what
do this once or
about
twice
me?
before we do it. Alright, we've about got it polished up the way we want. Just going to clean up the top here a little bit. Just taking our switch. See if we can get everything just about where we want it. It's in there nice and snug. We'll bend this to fit. Actually, this one's already been very slightly bent, so it actually fits correctly. We're coming down, and what you want is 1 or 2 threads showing in here. And this is your basic switch. You can tell you've got it deep enough. You've got 1 or 2 little threads left in here. You want to get it at least 1 left over. Take the bottom piece that says off and on, grip it firmly with your pliers, and take the off and the on and twist them downward very, very slightly. Not more than a 1/16 of an inch on the edge, just enough so it follows the curve. The next phase now will be to mark it 3 diameters of your drill bit out to either side and drill it, and then countersink it for the screws that will hold the whole piece together. Alrighty, now we're ready to do the drilling. I'm just going to rotate this a little bit, make it a little bit easier for you to see what we're doing here. Got that nice and tight. I'm using 2-inch screws. Stay right on here, Jen. I'm using 2-inch screws. I think that's a number 8 screw, I believe. I've got an appropriate size drill bit. Again, if I put it in there, I couldn't countersink it. So I'm going to come out about 2 here, and nice and lined up across. Exactly in line with it on the other side. About 2 here. Alrighty, so what are we looking at? We're looking at something that shows up as being about 24 millimeters on center, more or less. The next phase now, of course, is to take our screw, stay right here, to take our screw, get an appropriately sized bit that's just a little bit bigger. We got about the right taper. So now we're just going to prepare to countersink it, and it takes very, very little to do that. As soon as you start digging in just a tiny bit, and this one is just a tiny bit close, we'll get those countersunk. Alrighty, I've countersunk those. Putting the screw in, making sure that it goes down. See, it projects out a little bit below it. We're actually going to trim this up so that we're just long enough right in here to meet the inside of that, so that this switch is not any higher than it absolutely has to be, and that will eventually cause our pieces to get flat. We need to come out, instead of 25 millimeters, about 30 millimeters on center is probably going to be just a little bit better. Even 27 or 28 will work, because I just coming into the edge of my switch here, and about the same on the other side. Alright, all we've done now is we're measuring a 1/2 inch, and we're just marking a 1/2 inch on it. That's where we're going to cut it. Simple and easy, and that gives us an extra 1/8 of an inch to play with. Alright, we finished our cut now. Looks really, really rough, but it's an 1/8 of an inch over what we need. So now, what we need to do is just clean up that edge. It doesn't have to be perfect. 60 grit, worked around in a circle, is fine. It doesn't take much. We're already mostly there. We get a little bit more of this out, and we'll be done. Alright. I cut out about a minute there of me playing around with it. And again, it's not by any means perfect. This side fits up flush against it, and you just got to be sure that the outer edge is clean as it goes around, and avoid doing anything to this edge other than just enough deburring it. Whatever you do, don't drop them. They hit the ground, even for a split second, you get something like this right here, which will be enough that if I don't polish it out, it'll show on the finished product. We can see our finished product here is right at 30 millimeters. That's about 1 inch and 3/16, which is about what we wanted. That's about almost 1/8 inch more than we needed for the switch. I've run a line around it about 22 to 23 millimeters up from the bottom. We're going to indent this very, very slightly with a hacksaw, cleanly all the way around about 1/16 of an inch, and that will give us our separation between the top and the bottom and provide us that look of a cap that we're looking for later. Alright, we've marked it and I've set this up for it. Now we're just going to very gently give myself just enough of a line to be scribed all the way around. Doesn't take very much pressure, and you can overdo this really, really easy. So just take your time. Keep that constant downward pressure. We're almost done. And now we've got that very faint line scribed all the way around. I'm going to take a jeweler's file and just clean that up very, very gently, and then we'll be ready to tape and paint. Alrighty, we basically got our line scribed. The next phase we're going to do is take that bottom half now all the way around, and we're just going to take it with a steel wool and polish it up enough so that the ink marks disappear, any major defects disappear. A couple of minor ones actually don't hurt it at all. They add a lot of character. Once I get that done, I'm going to tape it and we'll be ready for paint. Alrighty, we're just about done. You can still see a little bit of ink mark here, and it doesn't take a whole lot to get that ink mark all the way off, and you want to get it all the way off. In this particular case, I'm going to be making them with the ivory bottoms, which means I'm going to be leaving this bottom piece white when I get done. Some minor defects in it as you go around are actually not a problem. They add a little bit of character to it. Don't cause you any problems. See that little one right there? You can actually get those out with a minimum of effort. A lot of times you'll have something like this. You'll still have a casting mark. Those casting marks, you can simply run your file over it in each direction, get it down flush, and polish it out, or you can leave them in there. Doesn't make a big difference. Alrighty, we're just getting it up for the tape, and again, you're going to leave it just so you can just barely see your line that you've scribed, so that you get just a little bit of paint down into it, but you don't want it going below that point. Painter's tape works just fine. It's easy to clean off, don't have any issues with it. Again, take your time, get a nice fit, pull a little bit off to the side, and now you're basically ready to paint. I'm going to touch the bottom up on the inside with black paint, just because I do, and this will get a nice clean coat. And something that I always do that makes this look dramatically better, I'm using Krylon Brass Metallic. You can also use the gold paint. The difference between them is very subtle, and yeah, well, it's very subtle. Move your hand. Alright, now we're just ready. Important that you get the sides first. When you're using this particular paint, it's very sensitive to, not to temperature as much as it is to humidity. Alright, we're in nice and tight on it right now, and you'll notice that with the paint, all of those surface imperfections, the tiny ones that were left, are pretty much all gone right now. What we're going to do is top coat it and show you the difference. Keep an eye on this and stand by. What you'll see here is that I've top coated it after about an hour with clear gloss lacquer. Clear gloss lacquer. And it gives it a little bit more wet look, gives it a little bit more shine. Most of that will stay as it goes up. It's also darkened it just a little bit, and it actually looks a little bit more like brass now than it did previously. And we've got the profile right. We're almost done.